bringing in your wealth of experience or knowledge, or an engineering school or a medical school, you need to really understand the softer side of things, that he has a legacy of relationship with those people. What we don't teach in our business schools, unfortunately, and not only here but outside as well, and there's a growing culture of teaching family business and entrepreneurship now in various different international institutions, is that we focus more on skill development, the hard skill development. How do you do this Excel sheet? How do you make this presentation? How do you do business modeling? But we don't send them out to real families. Like, they have their own challenges, exactly the same challenges that you have and I have in our families.
Okay, let's begin with the roles of an outsider.
Sure.
Like a young graduate, as you said, that he needs to pay attention to the personality
And
of
the
these
culture.
And the culture, of course. Sometimes they find themselves to be very lost because they're so the grid lines in such an organization are very complex. You seldom understand who is the real decision maker. You may be reporting to a family member,
Sure.
whereas there could be someone elder to him, and you don't know who's pulling the strings.
Sure.
So what would your advice be to professionals working with these family
Well, if
organizations?
you see family offices in Pakistan or anywhere in the world, you see people who have spent a considerable amount of time usually have considerable amount of respect.
Right.
In our instant culture, where you open up something and you get instant gratification, our MBAs tend to forget that you have to spend some time or intelligence. Like intelligence,
You have
whether
to prove yourself.
you have
You
to
have to
prove-
win that trust.
you have to win that trust. It takes some time. Also, there is a lack of mentorship culture. So the responsibility lies on organization as well.
Right.
Sometimes you find natural mentors, and I've been lucky. I found people who, amidst all that politics, some uncle will come up and say, listen, I see that you work really hard, but you're a little bit more aggressive and you're sending a wrong signal that other people are not working hard, right?
Right.
So that's another dilemma. When and in our culture we call those people oversmart. I tend to disagree, but then working hard is one thing, working intelligently is another thing. I will.
And working in teams is important. I think where a lot of young people go wrong is when they try to prove their mettle, they work really hard, but in that dilemma of things, or in the process of things, when you're also overloaded with work, you're absolutely right. Sometimes your actions may be showing that the other person's not working hard enough. And say, more importantly, this conversation has years of experience and knowledge and expertise. His knowledge, of course, of working with families all across Pakistan. And I do want to get into how families in Karachi differ from families in Lahore or other parts of the country. But more importantly, Furqan, you've known Abbas forever. And let's go back to the time when you were both young graduates, not owning the enterprises that you now run today. How did it all start? How did you find working with families? Did you ever get time to gossip and think back and look back and say, oh my God, the state just does not understand?
Actually, we've always found ourselves short of time to discuss what happened in the past.
Right.
That's true.
Everything that it was all it was a glittering effect, and what happened in the past seems like fantasy.
Right.
It seems just like yesterday at times, but sometimes, like I said, it seems so little. Whenever he visits us, we are too short of time, and then we sit down for a couple of minutes and we discuss how things started in the early 90s, and when we never had what we have today, when we never belonged to the industries where we belong today. Although we both were actually doing something, we were not on the streets, but we were doing something, but we were just struggling, and we were trying to do what we are doing today.
Right.
But we had our motives, he had his motives. One good thing that we shared, what we shared even today, is that we were clear that we needed to do something, and we needed to build up ourselves and our future and the future of many people who will be associated with us.
So you wanted to be job creators rather than just be looking for jobs.
I think that's the exact definition of us both. It's not just that I'm into the entertainment industry and he is into all this, but the problem is that we wanted to be someone who actually will build many futures. We wanted to do that.
This little business of inheritance, it can be very tricky because we have some real problems to deal with. As a society, as a culture, we're rather secretive. We don't really divulge too much about our business doings to our families. And then more importantly, we've been listening and we've been hearing the criticism about families who've been in politics forever, and somehow they've inherited their constituencies and they have gone into, running elections. But we see a similar trend now happening in media. All these big media conglomerates and media houses are actually run by families. Furkan, how's your experience dealing with the family in media?
The number of years that I've spent into the media industry, I've been in the industry for the last 20 years. I'm part of it since the beginning. When we started, it was all a very small industry. We only had PTV. There were very few people.
Right.
And they grew up to what they are today. So I think I'll say that right now, today, there are many family-oriented people, family businesses running, but since they were not there at that time, so I had no issues with them. Right now, they are mostly into the family. There are channels that belong to families. They're family-oriented, family-working channels, and but now I think they're more secretive, like you said. They don't actually let people know what they are doing and what they plan to do in future, and they don't build people. They've stopped building people. That's the minus
And do
point.
you feel that they could be, Abbas, what would your suggestion be to families when they're working together and they make great fortunes and they have conglomerates, they could be in a variety of businesses. Some of the family members may not have interest in all kinds of businesses. But do you still feel that they have to sit together and they make all the decisions together?
I think there are two kind of businesses when you look at a family structure. One, of course, is a legacy business that your father must have started. Regardless of the fact that you don't like the way he works, regardless of the fact that he has done certain mistakes in his life, but he still did something, right? So there has to be that inherent respect towards that effort, right? That's because we are sitting here, that's where we're sitting on this table, a beautiful house, or have so much education and awareness that we can have a discussion. Beyond that, then you have aspirations. New generation have different aspirations. I work with not only Pakistani family offices, but also Middle Eastern family offices. I'll give you an example. And I'll come to the working relationship amongst different family members as well. I was working with somebody and he said, well, my son doesn't understand it and he wants to do this some very, I don't want to use the word that I want to use, but it's a very ambitious idea. And I said, okay, do you agree with it? And he said, no, I don't understand it and I don't agree with it. And I said, okay. I sat with the guy and I asked, what is it that you want to do? And he said, I want to do an Arabic Facebook. I said, but you just said that there is a Facebook, right? Why do you want to do an Arabic? He said, well, I think that it will be easier to connect and all that.
Yeah.
Now, if I would have said this is not a good idea, blah blah blah, I would have lost a friend and a trust at that time. I went back to his father and I said, well, I personally think it's not a good business idea, but let me just talk him out of it. And I managed him for next 3-4 months, and we asked him to invest in something which is more sustainable and more intelligent in terms of investment.
I think that is where experts and consultants and mentors like you enter the picture. A number of times I see it as a any logical person can see that the point of friction becomes that the second generation of these families, they see that their families have capital, they have great ideas where they feel this capital must be invested, and then they are the cautious older generation who needs to be convinced. And just because you have access to capital does not guarantee that you will be given that investment. And the best part would be if people could just listen and hear each other's concepts and ideas out.
I'll tell you why not. And that is not true in Pakistan. It's true just globally.
World over.
What happens is when you're an entrepreneur, you work your days off, you work at night, you're working constantly, right? So you don't have the time to have that conversation. What do you do then? You as a successful father will come back home and you'll have that 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute conversation with your children as they're growing up. And anything that you don't like, you'll try to do it by force, like enforce it by force, right? Now in that situation, your children, A, don't have the background of your activity, then they get that feeling that everything that my dad wants, get it done by force. The day they grow up and they have that power, they refuse to take that force from you. Now, what has happened in the whole transition, you missed out on the opportunity to have the discussion because of lack of time. And during that process, you need a person to facilitate that discussion. and that happens in structured formats.
So what you have discovered is a communication gap between the
Absolutely.
generations.
I'll give you an example.